Good morning, folks. Hello, gamers, GMers, so on and so forth. Welcome to Breakfast with Fat GM. Yeah, you didn't get fat by just sitting around on my butt. And maybe I did. I just had a recent, quite interesting conversation with the humble gamer over interpretation of well, they call rules lawyers. We used to call rules doctors back in the day. This is, somebody who has devoted a lot of time to studying the rules of the game systems and the campaign books and source books and what have you, and become very adroit at pointing out inconsistencies in your GMing. And this is coupled with the common knowledge or an in-depth knowledge of historical fact and fiction and myth, as well as mechanical functionings of how certain things would work. The subject in his video blog was, excuse me, it's the weather here in Iowa is up and down, and it's caused me to pick up a bit of a bug. Anyway, the subject, his material was, quite common, or about torches as being an example of how you go into a dungeon or a castle at all hours of the day and night, and you find hundreds of torches lit. And aside from making it more difficult for the players to sneak in and do their business, the mechanical absurdity of such a constant level of readiness can be misconstrued or misinterpreted. Of course, another person had commented the best way to counter such a thing is just to say a wizard did it, which is is not unreasonable considering you're dealing with a sci-fantasy or a fantasy setting. So it is plausible that that's exactly what happened. A wizard, or more likely a bunch of a wizard's apprentices and flunkies, have spent their time casting cantrips onto chunks of whatever to create endless burning torches. Now, we won't get into the absurdity of the material cost or things like the economic factor of trying to maintain such a level of illumination in such a crude format, because that's a topic for an entirely different subject, and potentially an example of padatry. Padatry. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the word. I know what the word means, I just can't pronounce it. Having too much knowledge and not knowing always when not to distribute it. There is part of the rub. From a GM's perspective, it can be very annoying to have one player, that one guy who's smarter than everybody else. And he probably may very well be smarter than you or the other players, and it is what it is. But it can become frustrating or disconcerting after a while if you're constantly being henpecked, if you will, by this one individual. Sometimes as a GM, you have to take this, as a person, take this feller off to the side somewhere and gently, politely have a conversation with them, or if necessary, take him off the side and have a nice, strong conversation with a club, explaining that it's not conducive to gameplay to continually stop the game to debate the absurdity of a given situation or how the mechanics of something should function. Now, on the other hand, I honestly encourage people to study, to read, to widen your base. You're going to play, you're going to GM, especially if you're going to GM. There's no reason not to have a wider range of working information other than what's in those books. That's one of the advantages of an older GM, more experienced GMs, is to not only get to tap on what they know in the game that they're playing, but they can bring things in from other game systems and adapt them on the fly. That gives them an advantage over a greener GM. Another way of looking at things is how realistic is our game world? How well do we go into stuff? And there's time and places for that. And if you got a sophisticated group of players, by all means, adhere to the mechanics and the realism as closely as possible, and within the realm of being fantasy. And yes, another feller commented, well, it's a fantasy game. Yes, it is a fantasy game, but you don't want your fantasy turning into some sort of psychedelic trip that doesn't make any sense at the end of the day. It's too complicated. Now, another side of that, we're talking, I didn't want to get into the economic side of things, but what's the value of a never-ending torch? I've played games with players with that. It's a convenient dodge or a crutch. That's what it is, my friend. It's a crutch. It's a convenient dodge to avoid having to deal with another set of rules and spells and other things that don't involve crushing skulls and pickpocketing people. Some lords, humidor. The reason why the game system has light spells and magical items that give you the ability to see in the dark or to see in very low light is to give you opportunities to go into those areas where at night, especially in those times, if you want to argue about historical fact, most of those people went to bed with the sun. You didn't have very many people up at night. And only the wealthy people could afford really, truly extensive lighting. And to light something the size of a castle, per se, and in any other time than an emergency is absurd. It's not realistic, even in the least way. Now, on the other hand, if your group's been bumbling through the dark and sets off enough guards and alarms and irritates the local wizard, well, hey, light the torches. Oh yeah, this is where you got more and more people running around at all hours of the night when they weren't normally up, angry and upset because you just disrupted their sleeping routine. Your players are in there, causing, confusion and chaos, and somebody says, "Turn on the damn lights. Let's see what's going on." And there you got justification. It's the same with dungeons. It always amazes me how perfect most dungeons are, especially with early GMs. Your green GMs, they go by the box concept of the dungeon. They, yeah, that's right. Enjoy the cold. Gotta love our. Anyway, the basic concept in we just got a bunch of parallel, straight, well hewn, intelligently made labyrinths of rooms and interconnecting hallways, and all are well lit, whether they're using torches or magic crystals or, I don't know. I've had a couple people use quartz crystal veins leading down from the surface, which of course, begs the question is, what time of day is it on the surface? Right? And are somebody feeding the horses? That's something, a lot of people tend to forget. This is something to keep in consideration, that while being a rules doctor can be difficult not to do, I mean, you have this vast well of knowledge and you want to share, you want to put your interpretation or you want to put your 2 cents worth in, and you want your opinion to matter. At the same time, if you've got a green GM who's already on the verge of being overwhelmed by the material he's working with, he or she is working with, and you dump on him, that's going to discourage him from running the game campaign. It's going to discourage him from continuing to be honing those skills. And I guess that would be a topic for another day. Is the fact that it's easy to be a player, much harder to be a GM. It is. And when you start rolling, digging out the books and start ruffling through the rules, and start looking for your folder, keep that in mind, would you?